بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. نويت التعلم تعليم وتذكر تذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسول الله والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. أما بعد، فالسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we continue with our classes on our fiqh classes on marriage. And continuing from last week, we are still discussing specifically divorce and the rules surrounding divorce, how to divorce, and the consequences of divorce, and so on. Now, and in our discussion, we spoke about formulas, clear formulas, and non-clear formulas for divorce. If a person uses a clear formula, a clear wording, meaning I divorce you, then the divorce falls regardless of one's intention, except in circumstances where it is clear cut that you are speaking about something else. Like, for example, if we mentioned, if I am narrating the story of a man who divorced his wife. So I'm saying that person said to his wife, I divorce you. And I might be relating the story to my wife. So it's like I'm saying, I divorce you, but I'm not saying it to her. Actually, the circumstances are clear. So the divorce will not fall with a mere wording. A divorce will only fall there in that case with intention, with intention. But if it's not a circumstance like that, where there's no, uh, it's not clear cut that you are speaking about, that you are referring to something else completely, then in that case, if you use a clear wording, then the divorce will fall even if you did not intend divorce. You intended to threaten your wife, for example, or you intended something else, does not matter. The divorce will not, the divorce will not fall. If a person uses a non-clear formula, for example, he says to his wife, go back to your parents, then he should be asked, what did you intend? Did you intend divorce or not? Right? So if a person says to his wife, go back to your parents, and his intention is that this marriage that's a divorce, there's no longer any marriage, that's a divorce, then by the words, go back to your parents, he would have divorced his wife, if he intended divorce with those words. If he did not intend divorce with those words, then the marriage will not fall. So any wording that has the possibility of, it has the possible meaning of divorce, and it has the possible meaning of something else, in that case, that wording will only bring about a divorce if it is coupled with an intention. If it is coupled with an intention from the husband to divorce his wife. In the previous class before Ramadan, if I remember correctly, we also mentioned that it is not a condition that you must speak directly to your wife. You must tell your wife, directly, I divorce you. Even if you tell another person, you told your friend, my wife is divorced, then she is divorced, right? So it is not that you must directly speak to your wife in order for her to be divorced. The main thing we said is you saying the words, clear words, and you're saying it loud enough that you can hear yourself. So even if you just whispered to yourself, my wife is divorced, then she is divorced. Then she is divorced. So we have to be very careful with the words of divorce. Now, we also mentioned that if a person just says to his wife, uh, talak, he just says talak or talak. If he just says it like that, or he says, I divorce, he just says, I divorce, then a divorce does not fall. Why? Because they say when you use the words I divorce, then you must attribute it to somebody. So you must say, I divorce you. Or you're speaking to another person and you say, I divorce my wife. Right? So the divorce must occur upon somebody. So if you just say, I divorce, then the divorce does not fall. However, if a person is asked, do you divorce your wife? Or his wife asks him, am I divorced? Then he says, or his wife asks him, do you divorce me? Then he says, yes, I divorce. then they say it will fall. Because that response there is in accordance with the question. It's in accordance with the question. Do you divorce me? He says, yes, I divorce. Then the divorce will fall. Now, khair. We move on, inshallah. We also spoke about the times that you can divorce. Certain times you divorce, it's haram, and certain times you divorce, it is not haram. So when is it haram to divorce your wife? If she is in a haid period. If she is experiencing haid, then it is haram to divorce her. Also, when it is haram to divorce her, if you divorce her in a clean period in which you had intercourse with her, then it's also haram to divorce her in such a clean period, unless it is clear that she is pregnant. If it becomes clear that she's pregnant, then even if you slept with her previously in that clean period, the divorce will not be haram. The divorce will not be haram. We said when the divorce is haram, the divorce still falls. Don't think now, no, that you divorced in a haid period, so therefore the divorce does not fall. No, the divorce still falls. It is haram. A person is sinful if he knew his wife had haid, or he divorced his wife in a clean period in which he had intimacy with, in which he had intercourse with her. It will be haram, yes, but the divorce will still fall. An exception to this, when a lady has haid, another exception, we mentioned some exceptions. Another exception is if a man issues his divorce in a clean period in which he did not have intercourse with her. So that's permissible. So he divorced her. Then afterwards she undergoes iddah. She undergoes iddah. During the iddah, obviously she's going to have haid. If she is somebody who experiences haid. So now she has haid. While she has haid, maybe there's another argument between the spouse. He divorces her again. Can you issue a divorce while she's under iddah? Yes, you can issue another divorce. Right? So now he issues the second divorce. Maybe 2 weeks later, while she had haid, 2 weeks later, he issues the second divorce. That second divorce falls. If while she has haid, is that haram for him to do so? They say it's not haram for him to do so. It's not haram for him to issue the second divorce or the third divorce if she is under iddah already and she has haid. Why? Why is it not haram? Initially, it was haram. Why? The first divorce is haram to give while she has haid. Why? Because you are prolonging her iddah and thereby causing harm to the lady. Right? Because we spoke about she needs to go through 3 clean periods. So if you divorce her during the haid period, then that period doesn't count towards her haid periods, her iddah period, her iddah time. Only once she starts her tuhur period, then only the time starts counting, even though she's already under iddah. Right? However, if you issue the second divorce or the third divorce while she has haid, there is no prolonging of the time. The time remains the same from the first time you divorced her. So therefore, it is not haram to divorce her. The second divorce or the third divorce while she is under iddah and she has haid. While she is under iddah and she has haid, is not haram. Why? Because you're not extending the iddah. So for example, a man divorces his wife. He divorces his wife and she has a few days of tuhur left. So then for a few days of clean period, a clean cycle. She has a few days of a clean cycle left. So that's one clean cycle. Iddah period, we said, is 3 clean cycles. Then she experiences haid, her first haid during iddah. Once that haid ends, she experiences another clean period. Once that clean period ends, then she experiences a second haid period, her second menstrual cycle. During the second menstrual cycle, the man issues another divorce. The man issues his second divorce. Now, how long still is the iddah? The iddah is just merely when that menstrual cycle ends, she just has to complete one more clean period, and then her iddah will come to an end. Her iddah does not restart when he issues the second divorce or the third divorce while she is under iddah. Now, So there it is not haram. Some people think that if a man issues a divorce while his wife is under iddah, then the divorce does not fall. That is not correct. The divorce does fall, as we will see when we get to the. Now, that's actually one of the conditions. One of the conditions for the iddah to fall is that the lady must be either your wife or she must be under a revocable divorce, a revocable iddah, or a iddah where husband can take his wife back, meaning he only divorced her once or twice. Then if he issues a divorce, the divorce will fall. But if he divorced her thrice, then he issues another divorce, does the divorce fall? No. Or if the lady went for a fasq and she got a fasq, she got an annulment of the marriage, and now she's under iddah and the husband issues a divorce. Does the divorce fall while she's under iddah? No, the divorce does not fall while she's under iddah. Or the lady pays for a divorce, a khula', right? She pays for her divorce, then she's under iddah. Then if the husband divorces his wife while she's under iddah, in that case, the divorce also does not fall. Why? Because he cannot take his wife back during those iddahs. So any iddah in which the husband cannot take his wife back, if he must issue a divorce during that iddah, the divorce will not fall. The divorce will not fall now. Khair. We move on, inshallah. The author, rahimahullah, he says that a free man owns 3 divorces. A free man owns 3 divorces, and a slave, a male slave, only owns 2 divorces. So in the time there were slaves, if 2 slaves were married, for example, and the male slave issued a divorce, if he issues 1 divorce, he can still take his wife back. If he issues 2 divorces, he can no longer take his wife back. As for a free person, if you issue 1 divorce, you can take your wife back. If you issue a second divorce, you can still take her back. Once you issue the 3rd divorce, you can no longer take her back. You can no longer take her back during the iddah. In fact, you have to wait till the iddah. If you want to reconcile with her and get back together with her, you have to wait till the iddah expires. She has to marry somebody else. She has to consummate the marriage with that person. Then that person has to divorce her. Then she has to complete the iddah of that person. Once she completes the iddah, then she can get back together with her first husband with a new mahr and a new marital contract, with a new dowry. Now, is it haram to give your wife all 3 divorces at once? No, it is not haram. It is not haram. It is permissible. However, obviously not recommended. In fact, 1 divorce, obviously, we said we gave the only if there's no good reason, only if there's a good reason and so forth, then you can divorce. But if you can divorce and you gave 3 divorces all at once, is it permissible? Yes, it is permissible, and all 3 divorces will fall. Many people think that 3 divorces counts as 1. He thinks in order to issue 1 divorce, he needs to give all 3 at once. I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. That is not the case. If you say it like that, all 3 divorces will fall. Or if a person says, I divorce you 3 times, then 3 divorces fall. Or if he says, I divorce you 1,000 times, how many divorces fall? 1,000? No, 3 still falls. Right? 3, because the maximum is 3. The maximum is 3. Now, so a person can issue. The only difference is if a man says, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, and he intends by the 2nd and 3rd divorce, he intends emphasis. Right? Because sometimes maybe a person you think maybe the wife won't take him seriously, won't realize it, that he actually divorced. So he says, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, and he says 3 times out of emphasis, not because he's intending 3 divorces, no, but out of emphasis, then only 1 divorce will fall. That if he says he repeats, because that's a valid way to emphasize things when you repeat things. So that's an accepted intention. But if a man tells his wife, I divorce you 3 times, now we can't say that is for emphasis. Now 3 divorces will fall. Now 3 divorces will fall. Okay. The next thing is he mentions that it is valid to make an exception to the number of divorces. All right. So in Arabic, you have this concept of making exceptions to numbers. Like for example, is it? I think it is Nabi Nuh alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about him, فَلَبِثَ فِيهِمْ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ إِلَّا خَمْسِينَ عَامًا, that he remained amongst his people for 1,000 years except for 50. 1,000 years except for 50. So that's how many years? 950 years. 950 years he was calling his people, having sabr with his people, calling his people to Allah, calling them away from ascribing partners to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine 950 years was his mission, subhanallah. Now, so there you can see the 150, 1,000 except for 50. So in Arabic it is valid also if a person says, طَلَّقْتُكِ ثَلَاثًا إِلَّا وَاحِدًا, I divorce you 3 times except for one. Or I divorce you 3 times except for two. Or I divorce you 1,000 times except for 999. Right? So it is valid. It is valid to make an exception to the number. However, the condition is the exception must also, you must also say the exception loud enough that you can hear yourself. You can't say I divorce you 3 times and then whisper that nobody, such so soft nobody can hear, and you say, and you just have lip movement except for two, for example, right? Without saying anything, you just lip movement, and there's no sound that comes from, right? And also you can't say I divorce you 3 times, and then you take a long break, and then afterwards you say except for two. No, the speech must be connected. It must be, there can be no gaps in between the exception. All right. So I divorce you 3 times except for two. There it's connected. But you say I divorce you 3 times, and tomorrow you say except for two divorces. All right. That's not going to work because that's not a valid exception. That's not a valid exception. Also, for an exception to be valid, the number that you make an exception of can't be equal to the original number. You can't say, I divorce you 3 times except for three. Then that's not considered an exception, because an exception you need to remove some. But here you removing all, so then it's not a valid exception. So therefore, our scholars say, if a person says to his wife, طَلَّقْتُكِ ثَلَاثًا إِلَّا ثَلَاث, I divorce you 3 times except for three, they say the exception part gets cancelled out, and the first part remains, meaning the divorce of 3 times falls. He says, I divorce you 3 times except for three. That means three divorces fall, because we cancel out his last part of his speech, because that doesn't make sense. It's not valid. So it cancelled out, and the first part remains. The first part remains. If a person says to his wife, I divorce you twice except for 2 times, then also two falls. Then two falls. Now, if one of the conditions is that you can't, I divorce you 3 times, then you have regret. Then you say immediately except for two. Right? So he initially intended, I divorce you 3 times, but then quickly realized the consequences, and then he said immediately after that, except for two. Is that exception valid? Our scholars say no. You must intend the exception from the beginning time when you divorced. When you started the wording of divorce already, when you said, I divorce you 3 times, you must have already intended the exception to that number. Right? If I say I divorce you 3 times, then afterwards only I intend the exception except for two, then let's say three divorces fall. Three divorces fall. Now, another important discussion is, it is valid to suspend your divorces upon the occurrence of something else. It's valid to have a suspended divorce. How is this? All right. They say, yeah, it is valid to suspend your divorce with a quality or with a condition. All right. So how is with the quality? They talk about the quality of time. You tell your wife, you are divorced in the month of Ramadan. You are divorced in the month of Ramadan. So now what's the month now? It is Dhul Qa'dah. So they will remain married for the year until Ramadan enters. When Ramadan enters, his wife is divorced. And an exception, once you make an exception, a conditional divorce, what you call a conditional divorce, you cannot take it back. You cannot take a conditional divorce back. That's, when we study the chapter of Hajj, when we study the chapter of Hajj, and then our teachers, some of our teachers, they mention an incident that happened in Hadramaut. This is of the karamat, the karamat of the awliya, uh, of the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They said it was an incident whereby a man every year he wanted to go on Hajj. Every year, and he's telling people now he's going on Hajj, and he never goes. He ends up never going. So he wanted to like make it binding upon himself that he has no choice, he must go. All right? And there's no way out. So what did he say? He said, if I don't go on Hajj this year, my wife is divorced 3 times. And this is a man who loves his wife. He has no issues with his wife. All right? They perhaps have children and so forth. And so he said, if I don't go on Hajj this year, my wife is divorced thrice, 3 times. So now he must now be serious. He must go on Hajj this year because he loves his wife dearly. He does not want to separate from his wife. And he knows once he's 3 divorces, he cannot get back together with his wife. So this year comes, the Hajj of the year comes. There's perhaps like 3 groups that goes. First group goes, he didn't go with him. Second group goes, he didn't go with him. Third group goes, he didn't go with him as well. Until it reached such a point whereby it's like the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. He still didn't leave for Hajj. At the time, they used to leave via, it's not plane or anything like that. Right? It is perhaps via the cars or animals, whatever the case may be. So now, and he needs to make Arafah. Arafah is when? The 9th of Dhul Hijjah. Now it becomes almost impossible now to travel for Hajj. The last group left becomes impossible. So now he's looking for a way out. Because why? If he doesn't go on Hajj, just remember his wife is divorced 3 times. So now he goes what? He goes speak to different ulama. What can he do? Can he get out of this? And basically they all tell him, Khalas, your wife is going to be divorced 3 times. You can look for another wife, Salah. Right? Now, no way out. But he still doesn't give up. And he goes to various ulama and so forth. And eventually he comes across an alim, arif billah, somebody who knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's close with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has a special relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and is one who knows the ahkam of the sharia. And he insists by this person, help him. He doesn't want to separate from his wife and so forth. And the alim eventually, he feels sorry for the person and he says, okay, come the next day, the day of Arafah. And the person comes the next day, Fajr time. After Fajr, he meets with the Sheikh. The Sheikh tells him, okay, Bismillah, sit, close your eyes. He closes his eyes, he opens his eyes. He's on Arafah. He's on Arafah. Now, this might sound far-fetched, but nothing is impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing is impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's stories like this, even we know about the stories of Nabi Musa when he came to the throne of, what was the name? Bilqis. There was somebody who knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could bring the throne of her within a blink of an eye. Now, so the person is in Arafah, and the Sa'alim takes him around, make sure that the people of Yemen sees him, the people of his city sees him. And they do all the acts of Hajj. Once the acts of Hajj are done, the Hajj is done, the person again closes his eyes, opens his eyes, he's back in Yemen. He's back in Yemen. Now, he goes to look for his wife. His wife is not at home. His wife is with the parents because the wife now knows she is divorced. They're separated. 3 divorces. Khalas. He goes to his wife. Tells his wife, come back home. I went on Hajj. The wife doesn't believe him because haram. If a lady knows that her husband divorced her and uh, and she knows 100% that she was divorced, then she can't go back together with the wife unless there's a new marriage, whatever the case may be. She cannot go. So yes, she cannot go back just because if she doesn't believe her husband, she cannot go back together with her husband. So eventually the husband goes to the qadi, the Muslim judge, and he explains to the Muslim judge everything that happened. So the qadi also cannot just accept his word. So what does the qadi do? The qadi waits for the people of Yemen to return. And when they return, he asks each of them, did you see this person? And they all say, yes, he was here with us. He performed the Hajj with us. So he performed the Hajj with him, and the Qadi gave the ruling that they are still married. They are still married. Why? Because he actually performed the Hajj. The point now that I'm making is that once you issue a divorce that is suspended upon the occurrence of something, you cannot take it back. You tell your wife, if you leave the house now, you are divorced. Khalas, if she leaves the house, then then his wife is divorced. There's nothing that you can do to take it back. Now, if you tell your wife, when Ramadan comes, you are divorced. Khalas. There's nothing that he can do to take those words back. Now, that divorce will fall. That divorce will fall unless he gives a khula, meaning the wife pays for a divorce. Then that will be one divorce, and then the other divorce will not fall. Why? Because uh, if the time comes and he's not married to the lady, then the divorce cannot fall again. Because one of the conditions for a divorce is she must be your wife. I cannot divorce somebody who's not my wife now. Right. So now, if a person suspends the divorce, if uh, if you don't, or if you make dal curry again, you are going to be divorced. To make an example, all right? Then the divorce and the wife makes it again. Then the divorce is going to fall. Now, sometimes use conversations between guys. And the guys, if my wife don't make me tea, she is divorced. He's trying to show that he's manly and how he has authority. So if my wife don't make me tea, she is divorced. All right? The divorce falls. Not the divorce itself, but the wording is enacted. And if the wife doesn't do it, then the divorce actually falls now. However, there is some more detail with regard to this because it's got to do with how if I say to my wife, uh, uh, if you don't, uh, if you don't make me tea, then you are divorced. Then does it mean that if he doesn't make it now, or is it means like even, or is the time given? So scholars say that if it's a negation, if you don't, it's like a negative sentence, then there is delay in the occurrence of the divorce, meaning the divorce can even occur 5, 6, 7 years later. How so? Once there is no hope of her making tea ever again. So he says to his wife, if you don't make me tea, you are divorced. Then only if it reaches such a stage, such a period of time passes, where there is no longer hope of her ever making tea, meaning, for example, she dies, right? She dies, then it becomes clear that she was divorced. But during the time, they were still living together fine, right? Because there is delay when it comes to using those words. But if anybody divorces as a suspended divorce, he should consult the ulama. Does the divorce fall? Does the divorce not fall depending, did she do the thing, did she not do the thing? Now, and it doesn't have to be suspended upon her action. Our scholars say, if I say, if Zaid enters the house, comes into the house, you are divorced. Then Zaid comes into the house, then she's divorced. Now, so it doesn't have to be suspended upon her action, it can be suspended upon the action of somebody else as well. Now, the next thing is that a divorce does not occur, cannot occur before the marriage. I'm gonna get married to a lady. I'm gonna get married to a lady. But now I'm a person, I need somebody to make khidmah of me, to know, to assist me in terms of cooking and so forth. Because perhaps the person is a working person, whatever the case may be. So he now wants to make things clear before the marriage, you know. So he wants to tell his wife that, look, if you're not going to cook at least 3 times a week, you are divorced. Right? Or he tells his wife, before we get married, a year into the marriage, you are divorced. Then they get married. Then a year passes. Is there a divorce? No, there's no divorce. Why? Because he didn't have the right. When he issued the words, when he said the words, he wasn't married and he didn't have the right to divorce. So therefore it will not fall. It will not fall. Oftentimes what happens in today's time, a lady, for example, she is perhaps fearful of her husband marrying more than one wife, you know. So he says they have a contract that if the husband marries more than one wife, then that is a divorce. That is a divorce. Does that fall? If the husband now must marry a second wife, will the divorce fall? No, the divorce will not fall. Why? Because he made that statement before they were married. If he must say while they are married, if I take a second wife, you are divorced, then he actually marries a second wife, then his wife will be divorced. Then his wife will be divorced if he does so while after he's married, because while after he's married, then he has the right of divorce. So all that discussions before the marriage, sometimes they have marital contracts, whatever the case may be, you know, this is what the husband is going to do. And what we find today is you have this like this milka marriages, you know. What is the milka marriage? Again, they come to an agreement, perhaps it's conditions, that for the first 2 years of the marriage, because they may be still studying, right? They're going to live separately, and the husband is not going to make nafaqah. The husband is not going to make nafaqah, and they're not going to sleep together, basically. Right? That is just an agreement. Alright? Nothing of that is binding or anything like that. If it so happens that they get married and they sleep together immediately, alright, there's nothing that comes from it. The agreement was that he's not going to make nafaqah. If she avails herself to the husband, then immediately she can demand nafaqah. As long as she's saying no, she's available, then she can demand nafaqah, even though the agreement before the time was 2 years, no nafaqah, no spending. It's not. It doesn't have to see to the expenses of the wife, the needs of the wife. No, that does not. Has no bearing. That has no bearing now. Khair. Then, now, what time is Isha? Isha is quarter past now. Then there are four people. There are four people who their divorces do not fall. The one is the sabi, the minor. So we said there it is permissible for a minor, a young boy to get married, right? He might be 13 years old, for example, but not yet mukallaf. It is permissible for him to get married. He's now married. Can, can he issue a divorce? Can he tell his wife, I divorce you, and then the divorce falls? No, the divorce will not fall. The divorce will not fall until he becomes mukallaf. Once he becomes mukallaf, then only can divorce his wife. Now, the other one is the majnoon. A person becomes insane, and then whilst he is insane, he divorces his wife. Does the divorce fall? No, the divorce does not fall. Similarly, a person becomes so angry that he loses his mind. We say that a person, they can become so angry that he loses his mind. Meaning he doesn't know what he's doing. He's so angry, he doesn't know what he's doing. Meaning he's majnoon. He's insane. He divorces his wife in that state. Does the divorce fall? No, the divorce does not fall. All right? As for the person who becomes angry, but he's aware of what he's doing and so forth, he's conscious. Right? He didn't lose his mind. He just became very angry. He couldn't control himself. And therefore he said the words, the divorce falls. So we must be very careful. And similar to an insane person, a person who is unconscious, or perhaps a person who is in sleeping. A person is sleeping, during his sleep, he says to his wife, you are divorced. Does the divorce fall? No, he's not, because why? He's not mukallaf while he is sleeping. He's not mukallaf while he is sleeping. Now, a person who is drunk divorces his wife. He's drunk and he divorces his wife, so he doesn't have aql. Does the divorce fall? So we must see. When the person, the fact that he's drunk, is he sinful for being drunk or not? All right? If this person, he's on drugs, he drinks wine, and then he became drunk, and then he divorced his wife in that state, we're going to say the divorce falls as a punishment for him. As a punishment for him. But if somebody, perhaps, they have an injury, and then they took morphine, for example, whatever other drug that makes them, as a means of, managing the pain. So that is permissible. If there's nothing equal to it or better than it, then it becomes permissible. And in that state, he divorces his wife. Does the divorce fall? No. Or a person was drinking something, was thirsty, was drinking something. He thought it was just juice. He didn't know it is wine. He never tasted wine before. So he doesn't know what wine tastes like. So he's drinking it thinking it's just normal juice, but it's actually wine. Then he becomes drunk, and then he divorces his wife. Does the divorce fall? No. Why? Because he's not sinful for that. He's not sinful for becoming in that state. Now, the person who is forced to divorce his wife, does the divorce fall? So they say here, إن كان مكره بغير حق فإذا لا يقع الطلاق. If he is forced without a due right, then the divorce does not fall. But if he is rightfully forced, how can a person be rightfully forced? We spoke about, for example, the husband is abusive to his wife. Right? Then they go to the qadi investigates, the qadi then appoints arbitrators, right? And the husband and the wife agree to accept the judgment of the arbitrators. Then in that case, the arbitrators investigate and they see no, there's no, it's better, divorce is better, and reconciliation is not going to work. The problems are going to continue, the abuse is going to continue. They, the arbitrator now can force the husband now to divorce his wife. Can force the husband to divorce his wife. Another example is the husband's, we're going to do ila, we're just going to briefly mention it. Ila in Arabic, what does it refer to? When the husband says to his wife, he takes an oath by Allah, Wallahi, I will not sleep for you. I will never ever sleep with you again. He takes an oath, meaning have sexual relations with his wife. Or he says to his wife, Wallahi, I will not sleep for you for a whole year. So in this case, when he takes an oath not to sleep with his wife for more than 4 months, for any duration that is more than 4 months, then in that case, what happens is we wait for 4 months. Even if he said a year, even if he said forever, We wait for 4 months. After 4 months, the wife has the right to request that the husband either sleeps with her again, meaning breaks his oath and sleeps with her, or he must divorce her. Because now you're putting in a state of limbo. You know, she's not divorced, so she's still a married lady, but she can't sleep with her husband because of the oath. So now what does the Sharia say? The Sharia says once 4 months passes and she requests, he must either take her back, he must either, sleep with her, break his oath, pay the expiation and sleep with her, or he must divorce her. One of the two. He says, no, I don't want to sleep with her. I'm not going to sleep with her. What's the Qadi going to do now? The Qadi then is going to force him now to divorce. Now he's forcefully divorced. The Qadi is going to say, we're not going to divorce her, we're going to beat, we're going to eat you, lash you, we're going to imprison you. Right? And he says, no, I'm not going to divorce. Right? No, he says, sorry. Now the Qadi says, no, if you don't. And now he only divorces on account of the Qadi forcing him. Because he doesn't want to be beat up or he doesn't want to be imprisoned. So that's why. So he's forced. Does the divorce fall? Yes, the divorce falls. Even though he was forced. Why? Because he was rightfully forced. He was rightfully forced, so the divorce will fall. But in other cases, when a person is not rightfully forced, I put a gun to the, maybe there's a lady that I want to marry. You know, I'm interested in a certain lady, but she's married. Now I tell this man, I put a gun to his head, divorce your wife, or else I'm going to kill you. So now he divorces, he says, my wife is divorced. Alright? Does the divorce fall? The divorce will not fall unless he says the words and he actually intends divorce. Alright? So it could be that the person is forced, but he still intends the divorce. Then the divorce will fall. Now, so there are conditions that are saying for us to consider this forcing to be a valid forcing. The one is that the person who's being forced, or the person who is forcing, he must actually have the ability to enact the threat. You know, I threaten you with killing, or I threaten you, I'm going to break your hands, I'm going to break your bones, you know. So you must actually have the ability to carry it out, you know. Not, I'm a big guy, right? I'm a guy of 2 meters, a guy of 1.5 meters comes to me, no muscles, very thin. I know I can, he comes to me, he says to me, if you don't divorce your wife, I'm going to beat you up. I know you. Or a child comes to me, you know, a child of 14, 10 years old tells me, if you don't divorce your wife, I'm going to beat you up. Now I divorced his wife. Now he says, I was forced. This 10-year-old forced me. Right? No, that child doesn't have the ability to carry out his threat. Right? Now, وعاجز المكره عن دفع المكره. Another condition is that the person who's being forced mustn't have the ability to push away the person who is forcing him. Right? Somebody comes to me and he, right? And he says, if you don't divorce your wife, I'm going to beat you up. I'm going to beat you up. I have the ability to evade him, either to physically stop him. Maybe I have a weapon that's going to overpower him, or I can run away. It's easy for me to run away. I have no fear. If I know if I'm run away, I'm going definitely, this guy is maybe he's too fat or whatever the case may be. You know, won't be able to keep up with me. So I know I can run away. But despite that, I divorce my wife. Does the divorce fall? Yes. The divorce falls. Why? Because you had the ability to run away. You had the ability to run away, you know. Then again, the person who is forced must also believe that the person who is forcing him will actually carry out the threat. Not only that he has the ability, but he will actually do what he's saying. He's not bluffing. But if I believe, no, this person is bluffing, he's not really going to do what he's saying, then I can't claim that I was forced when I divorced my wife. Then I can't make the claim. No. And I say this, forcing, it occurs either with a darb shadid, you know, a person is going to seriously beat me up, or there's imprisonment, or he threatens me with taking my wealth, he's going to break my car, destroy my car, or he's going to take my car off from me, whatever the case may be, wealth of mine, then that's all valid forcing. Now, however, if sometimes what happens is the person is just, lightly, if you don't, uh, if you don't divorce me, I'm not going to speak, I'm not going to make you lunch. You know, like if you don't divorce me, I'm not going to make you lunch. And I say no, I was forced because otherwise I'm not going to get lunch. So therefore, I divorced my wife. That's not going to be a valid forcing now. Khair, we stop there inshallah because this is Aisha. We will stop there. We will continue next week bi'idhnillah ta'ala. And next week we will go into how to take one's wife back. Right? What are the laws pertaining taking one's wife back? Inshallah, that we will discuss next week bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Quickly, are there any questions before we conclude? Khair. Shall we stop there? وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.